Ezra Callahan dropped to his knees in the dirt, his rifle slipping from trembling fingers. 10 children huddled before him in that burned-out church, their eyes hollow, their lips cracked, their small bodies pressed together like a litter of abandoned pups. But it was the oldest girl who shattered him completely. Brown eyes flecked with gold. That pointed chin. Dark hair falling across her forehead. His daughter Lily's face staring back from a stranger's body. 3 years since he'd buried his family. 3 years of whiskey and silence. And now this. Before we begin, drop your city in the comments below. I want to see how far this story travels. And if you haven't already, subscribe and follow these 10 little souls to the very end. Now let's step into the heat. The screaming started just past noon. Ezra Callahan had been riding the south fence line for 4 hours, checking posts that didn't need checking, mending wire that wasn't broken. Anything to fill the silence. Anything to keep moving through another day that felt exactly like the 1,000 days before it. 3 years. 3 summers. 3 eternities since the diphtheria took them. His mare Dusty stopped dead ears, pinned flat nostrils flaring at something carried on the hot wind. Easy girl. But she wasn't having it. The old horse stamped and snorted, head swinging toward the eastern ridge where the abandoned Morrison church sat rotting on the hillside. Struck by lightning 2 winters back. Nobody'd bothered to rebuild it. Then he heard it again. A child's scream. High and raw and desperate. Ezra's spurs hit Dusty's flanks before his mind caught up. They were moving hooves pounding through sun-baked grass, his rifle already in his hand. The wind cut like a blade carrying that sound. That terrible sound that reached into his chest and grabbed hold of something he'd thought was dead. The church came into view. 3 walls standing, one collapsed under the weight of neglect and weather. Blackened beams reaching toward the sky like broken fingers. No horses, no wagon, no sign of life, except another scream. Weaker this time. Ezra threw himself from the saddle boots, hitting hard ground. He moved fast toward the gap where the front doors used to hang, rifle raised ready for trouble. What he found stopped him cold. Children. 10 of them. Huddled together in the corner like a litter of abandoned pups pressed against the scorched altar as if it could protect them. Wrapped in rags and scraps of cloth that couldn't possibly be keeping them cool in this heat. The oldest, a girl maybe 9 or 10, stood in front of the others with a rusted kitchen knife gripped in both hands. Her whole body trembled with exhaustion, but that blade stayed pointed right at his chest. Stay back. Her voice cracked like dry leather. I'll cut you. I swear I will. Ezra didn't move. Couldn't move. Because behind that fierce little warrior, 9 more faces peered out from the shadows. A boy of 11 or so, tall and thin as a fence post, one arm wrapped protectively around a smaller child. 2 little girls clinging to each other, their blonde hair matted with dirt. Another boy, maybe 7, his breathing shallow and wrong. Twin boys with matching terrified expressions. A girl with dark curly hair who couldn't be more than 5. And the smallest 2 of them, barely more than toddlers, silent and still, with enormous eyes. But it was the girl with the knife who held him frozen. That face. Those eyes. Brown with flecks of gold, catching what little light filtered through the broken roof. The pointed chin. The way her dark hair fell across her forehead despite the matted dirt and dried tears. Lily. His Lily. No. No, that was impossible. Lily was in the ground beside her mother. 2 crosses on the hill behind the house. 2 stones Ezra had carved himself because he couldn't afford proper markers and couldn't stand the thought of unmarked graves. The girl thrust the knife forward. I said stay back, mister. The movement broke the spell. Ezra lowered his rifle, slowly held up one hand. Easy now. I ain't here to hurt nobody. That's what the last man said. Her voice was ice. Pure ice in the middle of summer. Right before he tried to take my sister. Ezra's jaw tightened. I ain't that man. Prove it. How did you prove something like that? How did you show a child who'd seen too much that the world still had decent people in it? Ezra did the only thing he could think of. He set his rifle on the ground, knelt down in the dirt, and started unbuttoning his gun belt. What are you doing? The girl's eyes widened. You're scared. He kept his voice level. All of you, and you got every right to be. He set the gun belt beside the rifle. But I'm giving you my weapons. Man can't hurt you much without his guns. She didn't move, just stared at him with those two old eyes. Take them, Nora. The tall boy spoke up from behind her. Maybe we should... Shut up, Eli. She didn't look away from Ezra. How do we know this ain't a trick? You don't. Ezra stayed on his knees, hands open, palms up. But your choice right now is trust me or keep hiding in this burned-out church until you all die of thirst. Ain't nobody else coming up this way. I'm the only ranch for 20 miles. The smallest ones in the back, the toddlers, started to cry. Not loud, not the healthy wail of normal children. A thin, reedy sound, like wounded animals. Something in the girl's face cracked. Sparrow, hush now. She turned slightly, just enough to look at the crying children. Fern, take care of them. And in that moment, Ezra saw the weight she was carrying. This wasn't just a scared little girl. This was a child who'd been forced to become a mother, a protector, a general commanding troops in a war she never asked to fight. Let me help. Ezra kept his voice soft. Please. The tall boy Eli stepped forward, putting himself between Nora and the others. How do we know you won't take us back to him? Back to who? Mr. Whitmore. A smaller girl spoke up. The one with blonde hair and hollow blue eyes who looked at Ezra like she was memorizing his face for a wanted poster. He owns us. Got papers and everything. Ezra's blood went cold. Nobody owns children. Tell that to the judge who signed the contracts. Eli's voice was bitter, too bitter for an 11-year-old. Tell that to the sheriff who looks the other way. Tell that to our mamas who... He stopped, throat working. Who what? Who are dead? Nora's voice was flat, empty. Some of them anyway. Mine is. Patience's is. Gus's. She nodded toward the boy with labored breathing, then the blonde girl, then a girl with dark curly hair clutching a rag doll. Goldie's mama died in the workhouse. The twins' mama sold them for drinking money. And Sparrow and Fern. She looked at the two smallest children. Their mama was Cheyenne, got sick. Nobody would treat her on account of what she was. And Eli, Ezra's voice was rough. What about your mama? The boy's jaw clenched so tight, Ezra could see the muscles jump. She's still alive, far as I know. Eli looked away. She sold me. To pay debts. Legal and proper, that's what they told her. Ezra stood slowly, the heat forgotten, now replaced by something else. Something hot and righteous that burned in his chest like a branding iron. Where are you running from? Whitmore's farm. Nora finally lowered the knife. Just an inch. 3 days west. Cotton operation on the surface. But underneath. Underneath what? Eli answered. Underneath he works children. 12-14 hours a day in the fields. Barely any food. No pay. And when we can't work no more, when we get sick or hurt or try to run, he stopped. We disappear. Nora finished. That's what they call it. When a kid gets too much trouble or too sick to be useful, they just disappear. And nobody asks questions because nobody cares what happens to kids like us. Ezra closed his eyes, breathed deep. When he opened them, the children were watching him with a mixture of fear and desperate, fragile hope. My ranch is 2 hours east, he said. Got food, water, medicine for... He looked at the boy with the bad breathing. What's your name, son? Gus. The word came out in a wheeze. Gus Brennan. Got medicine for that cough, Gus. And beds. Real beds with real blankets. You let me take you there, I promise you'll be safe. You promise? Nora said it like the word meant nothing. Like she'd heard it before from other mouths and learned exactly what promises were worth. I do. And if we say no, then I'll leave my guns right here, ride back to town, and send someone else up to help. But by the time they get here in this heat... He didn't finish. Didn't need to. The children looked at each other. That silent communication again. A conversation born of shared trauma and desperate necessity. Then Eli stepped forward. If you're lying to us... The boy's voice shook, but his eyes didn't waver. If this is some kind of trap, you should know I killed a man once. One of Whitmore's overseers. When he came for patience. The blonde girl pressed closer to Eli, trembling. I hit him with a rock, Eli continued. Kept hitting him until he stopped moving, so I know what it's like to kill someone, and I'll do it again if I have to. Ezra met the boy's eyes, saw the truth there, and the horror of it. 11 years old and already carrying that weight. I believe you, Ezra said quietly. And I hope you never have to do it again. It took nearly an hour to get them all out of the church and moving. Ezra put the 4 smallest on Dusty Sparrow Fern, the twins. Marcus and Matthew, with strict instructions to hold on tight. The mare was steady, used to rough handling, and she seemed to understand that her cargo was precious. Gus could barely walk. Ezra ended up carrying him, the boy's thin body burning with fever against his chest. Nora insisted on walking, until Ezra pointed out that her feet were wrapped in bloody rags, and she was leaving a trail of red in the dirt. You'll slow everyone down, he said, not unkind, just practical. She glared at him, but she let him boost her up onto his back, her thin arms locked around his neck, like she was ready to let go and run at the first sign of trouble. Eli walked, refused to do otherwise. Somebody's got to keep watch, he said, and Ezra didn't argue. Patience walked too, staying close to Eli, one hand always touching his sleeve, like she needed the contact to feel real. Goldie held onto Patience's other hand, her ragdoll clutched tight against her chest. They moved slow through the heat. The sun beat down merciless and mean, and Ezra kept stopping to make them drink from his canteen. Most of them didn't want to, too scared to take anything from a stranger, but Nora ordered them to drink, and they obeyed. How long since you ate? Ezra asked her quietly as they crested a low hill. 2 days. Maybe 3. 3 days without food in this heat. How are you even standing? Wasn't a choice, mister. Her voice was matter-of-fact, no self-pity, no drama. Just the simple truth of a child who'd learned that survival didn't care about comfort or fairness. My name's Ezra, he said. Ezra Callahan. I know. He glanced back at her. How? Your brand. On the mare's flank. See inside a circle. There's only one ranch out here uses that mark. Callahan spread. My mama used to talk about it before. She stopped. Before what? Before Mr. Whitmore bought her contract. Nora's arms tightened around his neck. She was a cook. Good one, too. When she couldn't pay the boarding house no more after Daddy died in the mines, Whitmore offered her work. Said it'd be honest wages, clean, living, good food for me and her both. But it wasn't. No, it wasn't. Her voice went flat again. He took one look at me and said I'd bring a good price. Said pretty girls were worth more than plain ones on account of... I understand. Mama said she'd die before she let him touch me. Said she'd kill him herself if she had to. Ezra's jaw tightened. What happened? She tried. Nora's voice cracked just for a moment. She grabbed a kitchen knife, went after him when he tried to take me to the back house, where they take the girls who... Nora, you don't have to... He shot her. The words came out cold. Dead. Memorized. Right in front of everyone. Said it was a lesson about what happens to people who say no to him. And then he told his men to come for me anyway. But you ran. Mama told me to. Last thing she ever said. Run, baby, run, and don't look back. Nora's arms loosened, and Ezra felt something wet against his neck. Tears she was trying to hide. So I did. Found Eli first. He'd been planning to run for weeks. Then Patience, 'cause she goes where Eli goes. The others we picked up along the way. Kids who'd escaped or been left for dead, or were just trying to survive. You kept them alive for 3 days. Wasn't enough. Her voice hardened. We lost one. Little boy named Thomas. He was only 4. Couldn't keep up. Couldn't take the heat. Ezra didn't know what to say. What could you say to a child who'd watched another child die? It wasn't your fault, he finally managed. I know that. But she didn't sound like she believed it.
Batterie.
The ranch appeared through the heat shimmer just as the sun started its descent. Ezra heard Goldie gasp from somewhere behind him. Is that a real house? It is. With a real roof and walls that ain't falling down. Real as it gets. Is there food? One of the twins, Marcus, he thought. You said there'd be food. All you can eat. Silence. Like they didn't quite believe him. Like they'd been promised food before and learned what promises were worth. Ezra stopped at the edge of his property, looked back at the ragged group following him. 10 children. 10 stories of horror and survival. 10 faces looking at him with fear and hope and exhaustion. Listen to me, he said. What happens when we walk through that door? It's going to feel strange. It's going to feel too good. And part of you is going to be waiting for something bad to happen, because that's what you're used to. Nobody spoke. But nothing bad is going to happen. Not here. Not while I'm breathing. You understand me. Nora's arms tightened around his neck just for a second. Why? She whispered. Why do you care what happens to us? Ezra thought about Lily, about Martha, about the 2 graves on the hill that he still couldn't bring himself to visit most days. Because you needed someone to care, he said, and I needed someone to care about. He carried Gus through the front door, first laid the boy down on the couch that hadn't held anyone but Ezra in 3 years. Then he went back for the others, helping them down from Dusty, guiding them inside one by one. The house hit them like a wave. Cool air. The smell of wood and leather, and something other than fear. The simple presence of walls, and a roof, and safety. Goldie started crying immediately. Great gulping sobs of relief that shook her whole small body. The twins stood frozen in the doorway, tears streaming down their matching faces, though neither made a sound. Patience clutched Eli's arm so hard her knuckles went white, and Nora walked through the room slowly touching things. The table, the stove, the curtains at the window, like she was making sure they were real. Whose house is this? Mine. You live here alone. I do now. She looked at the second door, the one that led to the back rooms, the one Ezra hadn't opened in 6 months. What's in there? Ezra's throat tightened. Bedrooms. 2 of them. They'll need airing out, but they're dry. Got blankets. Got beds. Sparrow, the smallest girl, the one who hadn't said a single word, toddled over to Ezra and looked up at him with those enormous dark eyes. Then she lifted her arms, wanting to be held. Ezra froze. He hadn't held a child since Lily, hadn't felt that particular weight of small arms reaching for him, trusting him to keep them safe. She likes you, Nora said quietly. She don't like nobody. Hasn't since her mama died. Ezra knelt down. Slowly, carefully, he picked up the tiny girl. Sparrow weighed nothing. Less than nothing. A feather wrapped in dirty cloth with eyes too big for her face. She pressed her head against his shoulder, let out a long breath, and went still. She's sleeping, Nora whispered wonder in her voice. She ain't slept proper in days. None of us have. Ezra stood there in the middle of the room he'd built with his own hands holding a stranger's child, while 9 others watched him with various degrees of hope and fear. And for the first time in 3 years, something cracked open inside his chest. Something that had been locked up since the fever took his girls. Something that felt terrifyingly like wanting to live. "All right," he said, his voice rough. "Let's get you all fed, then we'll figure out the rest." Nora looked at him for a long moment. Really looked. Then she nodded. Once, sharp. A general accepting an alliance. "All right," she said. "We'll try it your way. For now." It wasn't trust. Not yet. But it was a start. And sometimes Ezra thought as he carried sleeping Sparrow toward the kitchen with 9 damaged children trailing behind him. Sometimes a start was all you needed. The sun was setting through the windows, painting the walls gold and orange and red. And somewhere in the distance, Ezra knew Cornelius Whitmore was already looking for his property. But that was a problem for tomorrow. Tonight there were 10 hungry children to feed. And for the first time in 3 years, Ezra Callahan had a reason to see the morning. The night came slow and heavy, pressing against the windows like something alive. Ezra moved through the kitchen on instinct, pulling out everything he had. Dried beef, bread he'd baked 3 days ago, preserved peaches from last summer's harvest, eggs from chickens he'd almost sold last month when caring for anything felt like too much work. The children watched him from the table. All of them except Sparrow, who was still asleep against his shoulder, her small fist curled in his shirt like she was afraid he'd disappear if she let go. "You can sit," Ezra said. "Ain't nobody going to bite you." Nobody moved. Nora stood at the head of the group, positioning herself between Ezra and the younger ones, still protecting, still commanding. Even now, even here. "Sit down," she ordered quietly. "All of you." They sat. Immediately. Without question. Ezra noted that. Filed it away. This girl had kept 9 children alive for 3 days in brutal heat, with no food, no water, no adult help. She'd earned their obedience the hard way. "How do you want to do this?" he asked her directly. "I can serve or you can." Something flickered in her eyes. Surprise, maybe, that he'd asked. "I'll do it." She moved to the counter, started dividing food onto plates with quick, practiced hands. The portions she gave the younger children were larger than her own. Ezra noticed that too. "There's plenty," he said. "You don't have to short yourself." "I eat last. Always have." "Not here." "Mr. Callahan." "Ezra." She stopped, looked at him with those 2 old eyes. "You ain't my daddy." "Never said I was, but you're in my house, and in my house everybody eats equal, including you." For a long moment she just stared at him. Then slowly she added more food to her own plate. It was a small victory, but Ezra would take it. They ate in silence at first, the desperate animal kind of eating that came from not knowing when the next meal would appear. Goldie put away more food than seemed possible for someone her size. The twins ate in perfect synchronization, matching bite for bite. Patience picked at her plate eyes, darting to the door every few seconds like she expected it to burst open. Gus barely touched his food. The boy's fever was climbing. Ezra could see it in the flush of his cheeks, the glaze in his eyes. "You need to eat, son." "Can't." Gus's voice was a rasp. "Hurts to swallow." Ezra went to the cupboard, pulled out a jar of honey. Martha's honey. She'd kept bees before. He stopped that thought. Buried it. "Here." He stirred a spoonful into warm water. "Drink this instead. Slow." Gus looked at Nora for permission. She nodded, and he drank. "Thank you," the boy whispered. "Don't thank me yet. We got a long night ahead." Eli had been silent through the meal, watching Ezra with the careful attention of someone cataloging threats. Now, he spoke. "What happens tomorrow?" "Tomorrow I ride to Buffalo. Send word to the marshal there. Man named Thaddeus Whitfield. I served with his brother in the war. The law won't help us." Eli's voice was flat. "Whitmore owns the law. Not in Buffalo. Not Thad Whitfield." "You sure about that?" Sure as I am about anything. Eli leaned back, arms crossed. We've heard that before. Trust me, I'll help you. The law's on your side. You know what happened every time. Tell me. They sent us back, every single time. The sheriff in Clayton, the judge in Millbrook, even the preacher who said he'd hide us. Eli's jaw tightened. They all sent us back. Because Whitmore's got money and we're just property, Nora finished. That's what the papers say. That's what the law sees. Not children. Property. Ezra set down his fork. Those papers, he said carefully. You've seen them. Seen them, signed them, or had our marks put on them when we couldn't write. Nora's voice was bitter. Legal contracts, they called them. For room and board and training. 10 years of service in exchange for our keep. You were sold into 10 years of labor. Some of us longer. Eli's contract was for 15 years, on account of his mama owed more. Ezra looked at the boy. 11 years old. 15 years of servitude. He'd be 26 before he was free, if he lived that long. That ain't legal, Ezra said. Not for children. Tell that to Judge Harmon in Clayton, Eli shot back. He's the one who signed off on every contract. Gets a cut of every child Whitmore brings in. $50 a head, I heard them say once. $50. Ezra's hands curled into fists under the table. For a child's life. For our labor. Our lives don't matter to them. Just what we can produce. Sparrow stirred against Ezra's shoulder, whimpering in her sleep. He shifted her gently, rubbing her back until she settled. How many children does Whitmore have? He asked. When we left, 23. Nora's voice dropped. There were more when we first got there, but some of them disappeared, Patience whispered. It was the first word she'd spoken since entering the house. They just disappeared. What do you mean, disappeared? Eli and Nora exchanged a look. That silent communication again. Sometimes kids got too sick to work, Eli said slowly. Sometimes they got hurt bad in the fields. Broken bones. Infections that wouldn't heal. And sometimes they just got difficult, Nora finished. Asked too many questions. Tried to run too many times. Fought back when the overseers... She stopped. Her hand went to her arm, touching a spot just above her elbow. Ezra saw it, the mark. A burn scar in the shape of a W. They brand you. So we can be identified if we run. Nora's voice was hollow. Like cattle. Like horses. Like property. Rage. White-hot and murderous. It flooded Ezra's veins, made his vision blur at the edges. He forced himself to breathe. Forced himself to stay calm for the children's sake. Show me. One by one they showed him. 10 children. 10 brands. Some scarred over and old. Some still pink and healing. Even Sparrow. Even Fern. Even the twins who couldn't be more than 4 years old. I'll kill him, Ezra said quietly. I'll kill every man who did this to you. You can't. Eli's voice was tired. He's got 20 men, armed, trained, and connections all the way to the territorial governor. I don't care. You should. Because if you go after him and die, who protects us then? The question hit Ezra like a bucket of cold water. He looked at Eli, really looked, and saw not a child but a survivor. Someone who'd learned to think 3 moves ahead, because thinking 2 moves only got you killed. You're right, Ezra admitted. I'm sorry. Eli blinked. What? I said you're right. Getting myself killed won't help anybody. I need to be smarter than that. For a long moment, Eli just stared at him. Nobody's ever... The boy stopped, started again. Nobody's ever admitted I was right about anything. Before. Then the adults in your life have been fools. Something cracked in Eli's expression. Just for a second. A glimpse of the child underneath the soldier. Then the walls went back up. "We should sleep," he said. "We've been walking for 3 days. Everyone's exhausted." Eli's right. Nora started gathering the younger children with quiet efficiency. Goldie, take the twins. Patience, help with Sparrow and Fern. Gus. I'll carry Gus, Ezra said. Boy's too weak to walk. Nora hesitated, just for a heartbeat. Then she nodded. The bedrooms, she said. You said there were 2. Through that door. First one's bigger, used to be. He stopped, swallowed. It's got a big bed. Smaller one's got 2 beds. Used to be the children's room. Used to be Lily's room. Used to be the nursery they'd set up for the baby Martha was carrying when the fever hit. The baby that never got born. Nora watched him with those knowing eyes. Your family, she said quietly. They died in this house. In their beds. Both of them. And you want us to sleep there? It was a fair question. One Ezra didn't have a good answer for. I want you to sleep somewhere safe, he finally said. Those rooms, they're the safest place I've got. Strong walls. 1 door each. Windows that lock. If anyone comes, we'll hear them. You'll hear them. Nora studied him for a long moment. Then she turned to the others. Eli, you take the small bedroom with Gus and the twins. I'll take the big one with the girls. I should be by the door. You should be resting. You've been keeping watch for 3 days. Let someone else take a turn. Who? Nora looked at Ezra. Him. Eli started to protest, but Nora cut him off with a look. He gave us his guns, she said. Either he's trustworthy, or he's the most patient trap in history. Either way, we need sleep more than we need to fight about it. The boy's jaw clenched, but he nodded. Fine. But I'm sleeping with my boots on. Wouldn't expect anything else. They moved toward the back rooms. Ezra carried Gus, who'd gone limp with exhaustion, and laid him carefully on one of the small beds. The boy's breathing was labored, his skin burning hot. He needs a doctor, Ezra said quietly. He needs a miracle, Eli replied. But I'll settle for getting through the night. Ezra pulled a blanket over the boy, tucked it around his thin shoulders. Such a simple gesture. Something he'd done 1,000 times for Lily. I'll check on him every hour, he promised. Keep his fever from getting too high. Why? What do you mean, why? Why do you care? Eli's voice cracked. You don't know us. We're strangers. Runaways. Somebody else's problem. Why are you... Because he's a child. Ezra straightened, met the boy's eyes. Because you're all children, and children deserve better than what the world's given you. Eli stared at him. Something wet glittered in his eyes, but he blinked it away before it could fall. My mama said that once, that I deserved better. His voice was barely a whisper. Then she sold me anyway. Ezra didn't have words for that kind of wound, so he did what he could. He put a hand on the boy's shoulder, felt him flinch, felt him almost pull away, then felt him lean in, just a little, just for a second. Get some sleep, son. I'll keep watch. Eli nodded, once, sharp. Then he climbed into the other bed, turned to face the wall, and went still. Ezra stood there for a moment watching. 2 boys. One burning with fever, one burning with grief, both too young to be carrying what they carried. He thought about his own son, the one Martha had been carrying, the one who never drew breath because the fever took him before he could. Would he have been like Eli, strong and fierce and wounded, or would he have been like Gus, gentle and sick and fighting just to survive? He'd never know. That was the hell of it. He'd never know. Ezra closed the door softly and moved to the main room. Found Nora waiting for him. I need to show you something, she said. What? She reached into the tattered pocket of her dress and pulled out a folded piece of paper, handed it to him. Ezra unfolded it, read it by the lamplight. His blood went cold. Where did you get this? From Whitmore's office. The night we ran. I knew we'd need proof, something to show people what he really is. It was a ledger page, names and numbers, children's names, prices paid, prices received, and at the bottom a notation that made Ezra's stomach turn. Josephine Walker, age 8, sold to Denver operation. $200. Thomas Chen, age 6, transferred to mining concern. $150. Mary O'Brien, age 10, special client. $500. Special client, Ezra said. His voice didn't sound like his own. What does that mean? Nora's face was stone. What do you think it means? Ezra closed his eyes. Breathed. Counted to 10. Counted to 20. He's not just working children, he said finally. He's selling them. To anyone who'll pay. Mines, factories, and... She couldn't finish. I understand. Do you... Her voice cracked for the first time. Do you understand that 3 girls have disappeared since I got there? 3 girls who looked like me. Pretty Whitmore called them. Worth more than plain ones. Nora. Mama died protecting me from that. Tears were falling now, silent and unstoppable. She died so I wouldn't get sold to some... She couldn't say it. Couldn't give voice to the horror. Ezra knelt down, brought himself to her level. Look at me. She didn't. Nora, look at me. Slowly she raised her eyes, brown with flecks of gold, Lily's eyes, Martha's eyes, every lost child's eyes. Your mama was a hero, Ezra said. What she did giving her life for yours, that's the bravest thing any person can do. And I'm going to make sure her sacrifice meant something. You understand me? How? By keeping you safe, all 10 of you, whatever it takes, however long it takes. But Whitmore will have to come through me first, and I've killed better men than him in the war. Something shifted in Nora's face, the tiniest crack in the armor she'd built. You promise? I promise. People break promises. Some people do. I don't. She studied him for a long moment, weighing, measuring, deciding. Mama used to say you can tell a man's worth by his eyes. Said good men have soft eyes, even when their hands are hard. Ezra waited. You've got soft eyes, Mr. Callahan. She wiped her face with the back of her hand. I don't know yet if that makes you good or just makes you weak, but I'm going to trust you, for now. That's all I'm asking. She nodded, then so quietly he almost missed it. Thank you. For the food, for the beds, for treating us like people. You are people. Don't let anyone ever tell you different. She turned toward the bedroom where the other girls waited, stopped at the door. Ezra. It was the first time she'd used his name. Yeah. If Whitmore comes when Whitmore comes, don't let him take us alive, any of us. Promise me that too. The request hit him like a physical blow. A 10-year-old asking him to promise death before capture. Nora. You don't know what he does to runaways, what he does to make examples. Her voice was ice again. The general was back. Death is better. Trust me. Ezra wanted to argue, wanted to tell her it wouldn't come to that. But he looked at her eyes, those ancient wounded eyes, and knew she'd seen things that made his war look like a church picnic. I promise, he said. But it won't come to that. You don't know that. No, but I believe it. She almost smiled. Almost. Good night, Mr. Callahan. Good night, Nora. The door closed behind her. Ezra stood alone in the main room of the house he'd shared with Martha and Lily. The house that had been silent for 3 years. The house that now held 10 broken children who'd somehow survived what should have killed them. He walked to the window, looked out at the darkness. Somewhere out there, Cornelius Whitmore was searching for his property. 23 children, reduced to 23 names in a ledger. Numbers to be tracked and sold and discarded when they'd served their purpose. But 10 of those numbers had names now. Faces. Stories. Nora. Eli. Patience. Gus. Goldie. Marcus. Matthew. Sparrow. Fern. And one more he hadn't met yet. He'd counted 10 children at the church but only remembered 9 names. He'd sort that out in the morning. For now, he retrieved his rifle from where he'd left it on the porch, loaded it, set it across his knees, and waited. The first hour passed. Ezra checked on Gus, found the boy's fever holding steady. Bad, but not worse. The second hour brought nightmares. He heard whimpering from the girl's room, muffled sobs, a sharp cry that cut off as quickly as it started. But no screams. These children had learned to suffer quietly. That broke his heart more than anything. The third hour brought visitors. Ezra heard the horses before he saw them. 2 riders moving fast up the road from the west. He was on his feet, rifle ready, before they cleared the tree line. Not Whitmore's men. The horses were wrong. These were working animals, not the sleek mounts Nora had described. The riders pulled up 50 yards from the house. One of them called out, "Ezra Callahan, that you?" Ezra recognized the voice. Deputy Webb from Buffalo. Good man, young but solid. "It's me. What are you doing here at 3 in the morning?" "Marshal Whitfield sent us. We got word there might be trouble heading your way." Ezra lowered the rifle, slightly. "What kind of word?" Webb dismounted, approached slowly with his hands visible. Smart man. "Rider came through Buffalo yesterday, asking questions about children. Runaways from a farm operation west of here. Man said he had legal authority to retrieve stolen property." Webb's jaw tightened. Said the property was worth a lot of money to certain interested parties. "And what did the marshal say?" "Marshal said there's no such thing as stolen children. Just children who escaped from wherever they were being kept." Ezra's shoulders loosened. Just a fraction. "He sent you to warn me." "He sent us to help, if you need it." Webb looked at the house, at the windows where small faces had appeared at the sound of horses. "How many?" 10. Webb swore softly. 10 children. Youngest is maybe 2. Oldest is 10, maybe 11. And they're in danger. A man named Cornelius Whitmore thinks he owns them. Got papers and everything, apparently. Webb's expression hardened. "Whitmore. I know that name." "Yeah. Heard rumors for years. Kids going missing from orphanages and workhouses. Families too poor to ask questions when their children disappear. Always led back to some farm operation out west." Webb shook his head. "Never could prove anything, but we knew." "Well, now you've got proof. Got a ledger page showing names and prices, children being sold to mines and factories and—" Ezra stopped. Couldn't say the rest. Webb understood. His face went pale in the moonlight. "Where are the children now?" "Inside, sleeping, or trying to." "And you're standing guard alone." "Didn't have much choice." Webb turned to the other rider, said something Ezra couldn't hear. The man nodded and rode off. "Where's he going?" "Back to Buffalo, to get reinforcements." Webb walked toward the porch. "Marshal figured you might need more than 2 men if Whitmore decides to push the issue." "Push the issue. That's a nice way to put it. What would you call it?" "An invasion. An army coming to drag children back to hell." Webb stopped at the bottom of the steps. "Mr. Callahan, I don't know what those kids told you. I don't know what you've seen, but I've been a lawman for 5 years, and I've learned that the worst crimes don't look like crimes at all. They look like paperwork and contracts and legal proceedings. They look like respectable men in clean suits doing business over lunch. Your point. My point is that whatever Whitmore's got, papers, connections, money, it won't matter if we can prove what he's really doing. The territorial governor's under pressure from Washington to clean up operations like this. Something about making the territory look civilized before they push for statehood. So we've got politics on our side. We've got opportunity. That's more than those kids have had in a long time. Ezra studied the young deputy. Honest eyes, steady hands, the kind of man who'd do the right thing even when it cost him. "All right," Ezra said. "Come inside. You can meet them in the morning. I should keep watch. You should rest. You rode hard to get here, and if trouble's coming, you'll need your strength." Webb hesitated, then nodded. "Fair enough." They went inside together. Webb took a chair by the window rifle across his knees and was asleep within minutes. The exhausted sleep of a man who'd learned to grab rest whenever it was offered. Ezra didn't sleep. Couldn't sleep. Instead, he sat in his chair by the fire and listened to the house breathe. Creaking boards and settling beams and the soft sounds of 10 children dreaming their broken dreams. His family. The word surfaced unbidden. Surprised him with its rightness. Not by blood, not by law, but by something else. Something older and more primal. By need. By choice. By the simple act of opening a door and letting broken things inside. Dawn came slow and golden, painting the walls in shades of amber and rose. Ezra was still awake, still watching when the first child emerged from the back rooms. Goldie. Of course it was Goldie. She padded out on bare feet, her rag doll clutched against her chest, and stopped when she saw Ezra. "You're still here." "Where else would I be?" She considered this. Then, the nice lady who took me from the workhouse. She was there the first night, gone the next morning. Sold me to Mr. Whitmore for $50. Ezra's chest tightened. "I ain't going anywhere, Goldie." "Promise?" "Promise." She studied him with those ancient child's eyes. Then she walked over, climbed into his lap, and laid her head against his chest. "Mama used to hold me like this," she whispered. "Before she got sick. Before she went to sleep and didn't wake up." Ezra wrapped his arms around her, held her close. "I'm sorry, sweetheart." "I know." Her voice was drowsy. "But you're warm, and you smell nice. Like horses and soap." A pause. "Can I stay here, just for a little while?" "You can stay as long as you want." She sighed, closed her eyes. Within minutes, she was asleep again. A 6-year-old child with a dead mother and a broken heart, trusting a stranger, because she had no one else to trust. Ezra held her and watched the sun rise and made a promise to himself. To her. To all of them. Whatever came next, whatever Whitmore threw at them, these children would never be sold again. Never be branded again. Never be treated like property again. He would die first. The sun rose higher. Deputy Webb stirred. The other children began to wake. And somewhere in the distance the sound of horses. Many horses. Coming fast. Ezra was on his feet before the sound fully registered. Goldie still clutched against his chest. Deputy Webb had his rifle up, eyes sharp, despite being jerked from sleep. "How many?" Webb asked. "Can't tell yet. A lot." Nora appeared in the doorway, fully dressed, knife already in hand. Behind her, Eli was pulling the younger children back into the bedroom. "It's him," Nora said. Her voice was steady, but her face had gone white. "It's Whitmore." "You don't know that." "I know the sound of his horses. Spent 8 months listening for them." She moved to the window, peered out carefully. 12 riders. Maybe more. Ezra handed Goldie to her. "Take the children. Back bedroom. Lock the door and don't open it for anyone but me." "But, Nora, now." She hesitated for just a heartbeat. Then she nodded and was gone, sweeping Goldie up and disappearing into the back of the house. Webb moved to the other window. "I count 14, no 15. Coming up the main road in formation. Military formation." "Close enough. Man in front's wearing a black coat, sitting his horse like he owns the whole territory." Whitmore. Ezra checked his rifle, loaded, ready. Then he strapped on his gun belt, the one he'd taken off for the children last night. "You don't have to be part of this," he told Webb. "This ain't your fight." "The hell it ain't." Webb's jaw was set. I've been looking for a reason to take down Whitmore for 3 years. Reckon this is it. Could get you killed. Could get both of us killed. But those kids in there." Webb's voice cracked. "I've got a daughter, Mr. Callahan. She's 4 years old. If anyone ever did to her what Whitmore's done to those children—" He didn't finish. Didn't need to. "All right then." Ezra moved to the door. "Stay inside. Cover me from the window. Don't shoot unless I give the signal." "What's the signal?" "Me shooting first." He stepped onto the porch. The riders had stopped about 50 yards out, spreading into a loose semicircle. At their center sat a man in a black coat on a black horse, his face shadowed by a wide-brimmed hat. Cornelius Whitmore. Even from this distance, Ezra could see the cold intelligence in his eyes, the absolute certainty of a man who'd never lost. "Mr. Callahan." Whitmore's voice carried across the still morning air. Smooth. Pleasant. Like a preacher offering salvation. "I believe you have something that belongs to me." "I don't believe I do." 10 children. Contracted laborers from my agricultural operation. They fled without authorization 3 days ago. Whitmore pulled a stack of papers from his coat. "I have documentation. Signed, witnessed, filed with the territorial office. Everything legal and proper." Legal. Ezra let the word hang in the air. "You brand children like cattle and call it legal." Something flickered in Whitmore's expression. The first crack in that smooth facade. "Identification marks. Standard practice for apprenticed workers. Ensures they can be returned if they wander off." "Wander off? Is that what you call running for their lives?" "I call it theft, Mr. Callahan. Theft of my property and my investment. Those children cost me a considerable sum to acquire and train. I expect to be compensated for their return." Ezra's finger tightened on the trigger. "They ain't property. They're children." "The law says otherwise." Whitmore smiled, that cold, dead smile Nora had described. "And I have the law on my side. Sheriff Clayton is prepared to deputize my men and authorize the forcible retrieval of my contracted workers. We can do this peacefully, or what?" Whitmore's smile widened. "Or I burn this ranch to the ground with everyone in it and tell the sheriff you resisted lawful authority." He leaned forward in his saddle. "I've done it before, Mr. Callahan. Families who thought they could hide runaways. Churches that offered sanctuary. Even a schoolhouse once when the teacher got ideas about protecting my property. You murdered people. I protected my business interests. There's a difference." "Not from where I'm standing." For a long moment, neither man moved. The riders behind Whitmore shifted uneasily, hands drifting toward their weapons. Then Whitmore sighed. "I'm a reasonable man, Mr. Callahan. I don't want bloodshed. Give me the children, all 10 of them, and I'll ride away. You'll never see me again. I'll even pay you for your trouble. $500. That's more than this whole ranch is worth." $500. The same amount the ledger said special clients paid for pretty girls. Ezra raised his rifle. "Get off my land." "Mr. Callahan." "Get off my land or I start shooting. Your choice." Whitmore's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes, a calculation, a reassessment. "You're one man with one rifle against 15 armed riders. You can't win this." "Maybe not, but I can guarantee you'll be the first one I kill." Silence. The wind stirred dust devils in the yard. A horse stamped nervously. Someone's saddle creaked. Then Whitmore laughed. "You've got spine, I'll give you that. More spine than sense, but spine nonetheless." He gathered his reins. "I'll be back, Mr. Callahan, with more men, with legal authority, with everything I need to take what's mine." "They ain't yours." "The law says otherwise, and the law always wins." He turned his horse. "Enjoy your day, Mr. Callahan. It may be your last peaceful one for a while." The riders followed him, wheeling their mounts in practiced formation. Within minutes they disappeared over the rise, leaving only dust and silence behind. Ezra didn't move, didn't lower his rifle, not until he was sure they were truly gone. Then his legs gave out. He sat down hard on the porch steps, rifle across his knees, hands shaking with the aftermath of adrenaline. Webb appeared in the doorway. They're gone. For now. He'll be back. I know. With more men, legal authority, everything he said. I know that too. Webb sat down beside him. What do we do? Ezra looked at the horizon where Whitmore had disappeared, then at the house behind him, where 10 children waited to learn if they'd live or die. We fight, he said. Whatever it takes. However long it takes. We fight. The back door opened. Nora emerged, still holding her knife. The other children clustered behind her, like chicks behind a mother hen. He's coming back, she said. Not a question. Yes. When? Soon, today, tomorrow, whenever he can get legal authority lined up. Nora nodded slowly. Her face was calm. Too calm for a 10-year-old who'd just learned her nightmare was returning. Then we need to leave, she said. Run again. Find somewhere he can't. No. The word came out harder than Ezra intended. Nora flinched. No more running, he said softer now. You've been running your whole lives. Running doesn't work. Running just means they chase you forever. Then what? We stand. We fight. We prove to the world what Whitmore really is. Eli pushed forward from the group. How nobody believes kids like us. Nobody cares what happens to... The marshal in Buffalo cares. Deputy Webb here cares. And somewhere out there are people with power who'll care too. We just have to find them. And if we don't find them in time... Ezra met the boy's eyes. Then I'll kill Whitmore myself, and as many of his men as I can take with me. You'll die. Maybe. But you won't. I'll make sure of that. Eli stared at him. That long, measuring stare of a child who'd learned to see through adult lies. You mean it, he said finally. You'd really die for us. In a heartbeat. Why? It was the same question they kept asking, the same question Ezra kept answering. But this time, he gave them the truth. Because 3 years ago, I lost my family, my wife, my daughter, and I've spent every day since then wishing I was dead. His voice cracked. Then I heard you screaming in that church, and for the first time since I buried them, I had a reason to live. Silence. Then Goldie pushed through the group and wrapped her arms around his leg. Don't die, she whispered. Please don't die. We just found you. Ezra knelt down, gathered her close. I'm gonna try real hard not to, sweetheart. I promise. Deputy Webb stood. I should ride back to Buffalo, get the marshal, bring reinforcements. How long? If I ride hard, I can make it by nightfall. Marshal could have men here by tomorrow morning. That might be too late. It's the best I can do. Ezra nodded. Go. Ride fast. And tell Whitfield everything. The ledger, the brands, the children being sold. Everything. What about you? I'll fortify the house. Make it as defensible as possible. Ezra looked at the children. And I'll teach them to shoot. Shoot? Nora's eyes widened. We're children. You're survivors. And survivors do what they have to do. Webb mounted his horse, looked back. Hold on, Mr. Callahan. Help is coming. I know. Now go. The deputy rode hard, disappearing in a cloud of dust. Ezra watched until he was out of sight, then turned to the children. All right, everyone inside. We've got work to do. The next hours passed in a blur of activity. Ezra showed them everything. How to barricade doors, where to hide if shooting started, which windows offered the best cover and which were death traps. Then he started teaching them to shoot. Not all of them. The twins and Sparrow and Fern were too young, too small to handle a rifle. But Nora, Eli, Patience, Gus, and Goldie, they were old enough. Old enough to aim. Old enough to pull a trigger. Old enough to kill if they had to. I don't like this, Patience whispered. She was the one who'd barely spoken since arriving, the one who'd been saved by Eli when Burke came for her. Guns are what they used to hurt us. I know, sweetheart. Ezra knelt beside her. And I hate that you have to learn this. But sometimes the only way to stop bad men is to show them you can fight back. I don't want to fight. Nobody does. Not really. But wanting doesn't change what's coming. She looked at the rifle in his hands, then at Eli, who was already practicing his aim with grim determination. Will you show me, she asked quietly, how to hold it? I'll show you everything. By midday, they had the house as fortified as possible. Furniture against windows, water and food stored in the back bedroom, a clear escape route through the root cellar if everything went wrong, and 5 children who could load, aim, and fire a rifle. Not well. Not expertly. But enough. Maybe enough. Gus collapsed around noon, his fever spiking dangerously. Ezra carried him to the back bedroom, wrapped him in cool cloths, forced honey water down his throat. I'm sorry, the boy wheezed. I want to help. I want to fight. But I can't. You've done enough fighting, son. Rest now. But if they come, I'll handle it. Your job is to get better, that's all. Gus's eyes fluttered closed. My mama used to say I was too stubborn to die. She was right. Now prove it. The afternoon brought a visitor no one expected. Ezra heard the horse approaching and grabbed his rifle, but Nora stopped him. Wait. It's just one rider. Whitmore wouldn't send just one. She was right. The approaching figure was alone, riding slowly, hands visible and empty. It was a young man, mid-20s, dark hair, nervous eyes, wearing deputy's clothes but no badge. He stopped at the edge of the property. Mr. Callahan. Who's asking? My name is Jacob Whitmore. Cornelius Whitmore is my uncle. Ezra's rifle came up. Give me one reason not to shoot you where you sit. Because I'm here to help. Help? You're his nephew. I know what he is. Jacob's voice cracked. I've known for years. I told myself it wasn't my business. Told myself the kids were better off working than starving on the streets. Told myself, you told yourself lies. Yes. The young man's head dropped. I did, and I can't anymore. Not after what I saw this morning. What did you see? My uncle's face when he talked about burning your ranch. When he talked about... Jacob swallowed hard. When he talked about what he'd do to the children if he got them back, especially the older girl, the one who took the ledger page. Nora had appeared on the porch. Her face was pale, but her voice was steady. What did he say about me? Jacob looked at her, then quickly looked away. I can't repeat it, miss, but I can tell you this, he'll never get the chance. Not if I have anything to say about it. And what do you have to say about it? I have documents. Jacob reached slowly into his saddlebag, pulled out a leather case. Everything. Contracts, payment records, names of buyers, names of officials he's bribed. He held it out. Enough to destroy him. Enough to put him in prison for the rest of his life. Ezra didn't lower his rifle. Why? What do you mean, why? Why turn on your own family? Jacob was quiet for a long moment. Because I have a daughter, he finally said. She's 2 years old, and every time I look at her, I see those children in my uncle's operation. I see what he does to them, what he'd do to her if she wasn't his blood. He met Ezra's eyes. I can't change what I ignored, but I can change what happens next. Please, let me help. Ezra looked at Nora, at Eli who'd come to stand beside her, at the other children crowded in the doorway. What do you think? He asked them. Do we trust him? No, Eli said immediately. He's Whitmore's blood. Whitmore's trained. He's probably lying to get us to lower our guard. Maybe, Nora said slowly. But maybe not. Nora, he could have ridden with his uncle this morning. He didn't. He could have told Whitmore about this ranch's defenses. He didn't. She studied Jacob with those 2 old eyes. Either he's the best liar in the territory, or he's telling the truth. And if he's lying, then we're no worse off than we were before. Whitmore's already coming. More enemies don't change our odds that much. Ezra considered this. The logic was sound. Cold, but sound. All right. He lowered the rifle. Slightly. Get off that horse. Come inside. But know this if you're lying. If this is some kind of trap, I'll kill you myself. Slow. Jacob dismounted. I understand. And Jacob. Yes. Those documents. If they're real, if they're enough to stop Whitmore, you'll be testifying against your own uncle, your own blood, in court, in public. You understand what that means. Jacob's jaw tightened. It means I finally get to be the man my daughter deserves to have as a father, whatever the cost. He walked toward the house, paused at the bottom of the porch steps. I'm sorry, he said quietly, to Nora, to all of them. For what my uncle did, for what I let happen by staying silent. I know sorry doesn't fix anything, but I needed to say it. Nora studied him for a long moment. My mama used to say, it's never too late to choose good even if you chose wrong before. Do you believe that? I'm trying to. She stepped aside and let him enter. The documents were everything Jacob had promised, and worse. Pages and pages of horror laid out in neat columns. Names of children, ages, purchase prices, sale prices, destinations. Some had been sold to mines, some to factories, some to private buyers, whose purchases were marked with special codes that Jacob explained in a hollow voice. This one means the buyer wanted a household servant. This one means... He stopped, swallowed. This one means something else. Ezra looked at the codes, at the names beside them, at the ages. 7, 9, 11, 13. All girls. He sold children to... Yes. Jacob's voice was barely audible. I didn't know. Not at first. I thought it was just labor contracts. But then I found the coded ledger, the real one, and I realized, does he still have children? Nora interrupted. At the farm, right now. 13. After you 10 escaped. We have to save them. Nora... Ezra started. No. Her voice was iron. I know those children. I worked beside them, slept beside them. Some of them are my friends. We can't leave them there. We don't have the men, the resources. We can barely protect the 10 of you. Then we find a way. She grabbed his arm. Ezra, please. If Whitmore gets those documents, if he realizes what Jacob's done, he'll kill them. All of them. To destroy the evidence. Ezra closed his eyes. She was right. He knew she was right. Whitmore couldn't afford living witnesses, not if his empire was going to fall. How many men does your uncle have at the farm right now? He asked Jacob. Maybe 10. He brought most of them here to find the runaways. 10 men guarding 13 children. Yes. And how far is the farm? Half a day's ride. Maybe less if you push hard. Ezra calculated. If Webb reached Buffalo by nightfall, if the marshal rode through the night, reinforcements could be here by dawn. 12 hours, maybe 14. Could 13 children survive that long? Could he live with himself if they didn't? I'll go, he said. Tonight, after dark. You can't go alone, Eli protested. You'll be killed. Maybe, but those children. I'll come with you. Jacob stood. I know the farm, know the guard rotations, know where they keep the children at night. You'd help attack your own uncle's operation. I'd help save 13 children from a monster. Yes. Ezra looked at him, really looked. Why should I trust you out there when it's just you and me in darkness? Jacob reached into his pocket, pulled out a small photograph. This is my daughter, Emma. She's 2 years old. He handed it to Ezra. "If I betray you, if I do anything to help my uncle, I want you to find her. I want you to tell her what kind of man her father was." Ezra looked at the photograph. A toddler with dark curls and bright eyes laughing at something outside the frame. "You'd risk your daughter thinking you're a monster. She'd think it anyway, if I don't stop this. If I let more children suffer because I was too afraid to act." Jacob's voice broke. "I'm done being afraid. I'm done being complicit. Whatever happens tonight, at least I'll die trying to be good." Ezra handed back the photograph. "Keep it. Look at it when things get hard." He turned to Nora. "You're in charge while I'm gone. But no arguments. Eli's your second. Keep everyone inside. Keep the doors barricaded. If anyone comes before dawn, if anyone tries to get in, shoot first. Ask questions never." Despite everything, Ezra almost smiled. "You're going to be a hell of a woman someday, Nora." "I'm already a hell of a woman." Her voice wavered. "Just in a small body." He knelt down, cupped her face in his hands. "I'm coming back." "You don't know that. I know I'm going to fight like hell too, because I've got 10 reasons to live now, and I ain't giving that up without a fight." She threw her arms around his neck. "Don't die," she whispered. "Please don't die." "I'll try my very best, sweetheart, I promise." The sun began its descent toward the horizon. Ezra prepared for the night ahead, loaded his rifle, loaded his pistol, found an extra knife, and strapped it to his boot. Jacob waited by the horses, checking his own weapons with hands that didn't quite shake. "Ready?" Ezra asked. "No, but that's never stopped me before." They mounted up. Ezra looked back at the house one last time. 10 faces in the window. 10 pairs of eyes watching him right away. He raised his hand. Nora raised hers back. Then he turned his horse toward the west. Toward Whitmore's farm. Toward whatever waited there. Behind him, the sun painted the sky in shades of fire. Ahead of him, darkness gathered like a held breath. And somewhere in that darkness, 13 children waited to be saved, or buried. Ezra rode harder. They rode through the fading light without speaking, pushing their horses hard across terrain that grew rougher with each mile. Jacob led the way, his body tense in the saddle, his eyes fixed on something Ezra couldn't see. Ghosts, probably. The ghosts of children he'd watched suffer while doing nothing. Ezra understood that kind of haunting. "How much farther?" he asked when the stars began to appear. 2 hours. Maybe less. Jacob's voice was tight. "We should slow down soon. Can't risk being heard. Tell me about the guards, positions, rotations, everything." Jacob nodded, grateful for something practical to focus on. 10 men, like I said. 4 patrol the perimeter in pairs. 2 guard the main house where my uncle sleeps when he's there. 2 more watch the children's quarters, that's the old barn they converted. The last 2 float, cover gaps, check on things. And the children, locked in the barn at night, 1 door, no windows big enough to climb through. Jacob's jaw tightened. They chain the oldest ones to iron rings in the floor, so they can't organize escapes. Ezra's hands clenched on the reins. "Chain them. My uncle learned his lesson after your group ran. Can't have the merchandise walking off again." "Don't call them that." "What?" "Merchandise. They're children, not merchandise." Jacob was quiet for a moment. "You're right. I'm sorry. I've spent so long hearing him talk about them that way." He shook his head. "It gets in your head. The language, the thinking, makes it easier to pretend they're not real people." "They're real." "I know. That's why I'm here." They rode in silence for another mile. Then Ezra asked the question that had been burning in his mind since they left. "The girl, the one my uncle talked about this morning? Nora." Jacob's voice dropped. "What did he say he'd do to her?" Jacob didn't answer immediately. "Tell me." "He said..." Jacob's voice cracked. "He said she'd pay for taking those documents. Said he'd break her himself before selling her to the highest bidder. Said pretty girls who cause trouble need to learn their place, and he knew exactly how to teach her. Ezra's vision went red at the edges. I'll kill him. You might have to. Jacob looked at him. He won't surrender. Not my uncle. He'd rather die than face prison, rather burn everything down than let someone else win. Then he'll burn. And the children. The children we save. Whatever it takes. They reached the edge of Whitmore's property just past midnight. Jacob signaled for them to dismount, and they tied their horses to a low branch well hidden from the main road. The barn's about a quarter-mile east, Jacob whispered. Guards change shift at 1 o'clock. That's our window. Maybe 15 minutes of confusion while the new shift settles in. What about the patrol? They pass the barn every 20 minutes. We'll have to time it perfectly. Ezra checked his weapons one last time. And the chains. How do we get the children out if they're chained to the floor? Jacob reached into his saddlebag, produced a ring of keys. Stole these from my uncle's office last week. Been planning this longer than you know. Ezra looked at the young man with new eyes. You were going to do this alone. I was going to try. Probably would have gotten killed. Jacob almost smiled. Having backup improves the odds considerably. How considerably? We might actually survive now. Maybe. I'll take maybe. They moved through the darkness on foot, staying low, communicating in hand signals Jacob had learned from ex-military men in his uncle's employ. The irony wasn't lost on Ezra, using Whitmore's own training to bring him down. The barn loomed ahead darker than the surrounding darkness. 2 guards stood at the main door, rifles in hand, talking quietly about something Ezra couldn't hear. He looked at Jacob, pointed at himself, then at the guard on the left. Jacob nodded, pointed at himself, then at the guard on the right. They moved. Ezra had killed men before. In the war. In self-defense. Never easily. Never without cost. But when he thought about what these men had done, what they'd helped do to children like Nora and Eli, and all the others, the cost felt worth paying. His knife found the first guard's throat before the man could cry out. Jacob was a heartbeat behind, taking down the second with brutal efficiency. 2 down, 8 to go. They dragged the bodies into the shadows, and Ezra tried the door. Locked. Jacob produced the keys, hands shaking slightly as he sorted through them. Third one, he whispered. Should be the third one. The lock clicked open. The smell hit them first. Sweat and fear and human waste and something else. Something that smelled like despair, given physical form. Ezra's stomach turned, but he pushed forward into the darkness. Hello. A small voice trembling with terror. Who's there? My name's Ezra Callahan. He kept his voice low and calm. I'm here to get you out. Silence, then whispers. Children conferring in the dark. That's what the last man said. A different voice, older, hardened. Right before he beat Thomas half to death for trying to run. I ain't that man. I'm a friend of Nora's, and Eli's, and all the others who escaped 3 days ago. More silence. Then a sharp intake of breath. Nora made it. She's alive. She's alive. She's safe. And she's the one who sent me to get you. A rustling sound. Chains clinking against wood. Light a match, the older voice said. I want to see your face. Ezra struck a match. The small flame illuminated a nightmare. 13 children huddled against the far wall, the oldest ones chained to iron rings, just as Jacob had described. Their faces were hollow, their bodies thin, their eyes were the worst. Old eyes in young faces. Eyes that had seen too much and expected nothing good from the world. Ezra recognized that look. He'd seen it in Nora's eyes, in Eli's, in all of them. I'm real, he said quietly. And I'm here to take you home. The oldest child, a boy of maybe 13, studied him in the flickering matchlight. There ain't no home for kids like us. There is now. I've got a ranch, food, safety, room for all of you. The match burned down to his fingers. He lit another. But we have to move fast. Guards change shift soon. Jacob stepped forward with the keys. I can unlock the chains, but we need to be quiet. One sound and a gunshot split the night. Then another. Then shouting from the main house. They know we're here. Jacob's face went white. Someone must have found the bodies. Ezra made a decision in a heartbeat. Unlock them, fast. I'll hold the door. But, do it. He ran to the barn door, rifle ready. Outside, chaos was erupting. Men shouting. Lanterns being lit. Horses being saddled. How long did they have? Minutes, seconds. A figure appeared in the darkness running toward the barn. Ezra fired. The man went down. Another figure, another shot. Behind him he could hear Jacob working frantically, keys clinking, chains falling, children crying out in fear and hope. Almost there, Jacob called. 3 more, 2 more, 1. They're loose, everyone up, move. Ezra turned to see 13 children struggling to their feet, their movements stiff from confinement, their faces terrified. Back door, Jacob said. There's a back door. Leads to the field. We can, Callahan. The voice came from outside. Loud. Commanding. Familiar. Cornelius Whitmore. I know you're in there, Whitmore called. I know my nephew's with you, traitor that he is. Jacob's jaw clenched. Come out now, and I'll make it quick. Keep hiding, and I'll burn that barn with everyone in it. Just like I promised. Ezra looked at the children, at Jacob, at the back door that represented their only chance. Get them out, he said quietly. All of them. Go. What about you? I'll buy you time. Ezra, go, now, while there's still a chance. Jacob hesitated for just a moment. Then he grabbed the nearest child and started herding them toward the back door. Ezra stepped out the front. Whitmore stood 50 yards away, surrounded by his remaining men. 8 of them, all armed, all pointing their weapons at Ezra. Where's my nephew? Whitmore demanded. Gone, with the children. Something flickered in Whitmore's expression. Rage. Pure and volcanic. You think you've won? You think taking a few brats and turning my own blood against me means anything? I think 13 children are going to sleep safe tonight. That means something. They're worth thousands of dollars. My investment, my property. They're children. They're nothing. Whitmore's composure cracked. Street rats, orphans, bastards. The world doesn't want them. I gave them purpose. I gave them value. And this is how I'm repaid. You gave them chains and brands and nightmares. I gave them discipline, structure, something their useless parents never provided. Ezra's finger tightened on the trigger. You're a monster. I'm a businessman. There's a difference. Not from where I'm standing. Whitmore smiled that cold, dead smile. You're one man with one rifle against 8 guns, Mr. Callahan. Did you really think you could win? I think those children are already running. I think by the time you finish with me, they'll be gone. And I think my death will buy them enough time to disappear forever. Noble. Stupid, but noble. Whitmore raised his hand. Kill him. Wait. A new voice. Coming from behind Whitmore's men. Ezra looked past them and felt his heart stop. Marshal Thaddeus Whitfield sat on horseback at the edge of the yard, 20 armed deputies spread out behind him. Their rifles were raised. Their badges glinted in the torchlight. Evening, Cornelius, Whitfield said calmly. Seems we need to have a conversation about your business practices. Whitmore's face went gray. Marshal, this is a private matter, a labor dispute. Nothing that concerns. I've got a ledger that says otherwise. Whitfield dismounted slowly. Names, dates, prices, children sold to mines, to factories, to private buyers whose purchases required special coding. That ledger is stolen property. That ledger is evidence. Evidence of child trafficking, child labor violations, assault battery, and, Whitfield's voice hardened, based on what those children told my deputy, probably murder. Whitmore's men were shifting uneasily, looking at each other, calculating their odds. Stand down, Whitfield ordered. All of you, drop your weapons, now. One by one they obeyed, rifles hitting the dirt, hands going up, all except Whitmore. No. His voice was quiet, deadly. No, I don't think so. He moved fast, faster than a man his age should have been able to move. Grabbed the nearest deputy's pistol, raised it toward Ezra. 2 shots rang out simultaneously. Whitmore jerked, staggered, looked down at the red bloom spreading across his chest. Then he looked up at Ezra, something like surprise in his eyes. You? He fell. Ezra stood there, rifle still raised, smoke curling from the barrel. His hands were shaking. His whole body was shaking. Whitfield approached Whitmore's body, checked for a pulse. Dead. Ezra lowered his rifle. I wasn't trying to. You defended yourself. A room full of witnesses saw him draw on you first. Whitfield straightened. It was a clean shoot, Mr. Callahan. No jury in the territory would convict. Clean. There was nothing clean about taking a life, even a life as twisted as Cornelius Whitmore's. But the children. Ezra turned, looked toward the barn, the back door through which Jacob had led 13 terrified children toward freedom. They were safe now, all of them. 23 children in total, counting Nora and the others back at the ranch. 23 children who would never be sold again, never be branded again, never be treated like property again. That was worth something. That was worth everything. Mr. Callahan. Whitfield's voice was gentle. You all right? No. Ezra's voice was hoarse. But I will be. The children from the barn, where's my nephew taking them? East. Toward my ranch. Told him to get them as far from here as possible. Good. My men will find them. Bring them somewhere safe. My ranch. Bring them to my ranch. All 23 of them. All 23. Whitfield studied him. That's a lot of children for one man. I've got help. Ezra thought of Nora standing guard back at the house with her knife and her 2 old eyes. More help than I deserve. All right then, your ranch it is. Whitfield turned to his deputies. Round up Whitmore's men, all of them, and send riders to find the children. Bring them to the Callahan spread. The deputies moved to obey. Ezra stood alone for a moment, looking down at Whitmore's body. The man who'd caused so much suffering. The monster who'd treated children like livestock. He felt nothing. No satisfaction, no relief, just emptiness where the rage used to be. It doesn't bring them back, he said quietly. To no one. To himself. The ones who died. The ones who disappeared. Killing him doesn't undo any of it. No, Whitfield agreed. But it stops more from happening. Sometimes that's all justice can do. Ezra nodded. Then he turned and walked toward the barn. Toward the children who were even now running through the darkness, toward something they'd never had before. Hope. Dawn came slow and golden, painting the world in shades of amber and rose. Ezra rode into his own yard just as the sun crested the horizon. His body ached. His heart ached worse. But when he saw the faces in the window, 10 children pressing against the glass watching for him, the pain eased. He dismounted. Nora was out the door before his feet hit the ground. You're alive. I told you I'd try. You're bleeding. He looked down. A gash on his arm he hadn't even felt. Must have happened during the chaos. It's nothing. It's not nothing. She grabbed his hand, started pulling him toward the house. Inside, now. I'll clean it. Nora, don't argue with me. Despite everything, Ezra laughed. The sound surprised him. He hadn't laughed in 3 years. "Yes, ma'am." The other children surrounded him as he entered, their faces a mixture of relief and fear and desperate, fragile hope. "Did you get them?" Eli demanded. "The others. From the farm. We got them. All 13. Marshall's men are bringing them here." A sob broke from Goldie's throat. Susie's coming? "I don't know names yet, but all 13 children from the barn are safe." "And Mr. Whitmore?" Nora's voice was hard. "What happened to him?" Ezra met her eyes. "He's dead." Silence. Then Patience, quiet, traumatized. Patience spoke. "You killed him." "He drew on me. I defended myself." "But he's dead. Really dead. He can't come back. He can't come back. Ever." She started crying. Not sad tears, relief tears. The kind that came when a nightmare finally ended. Eli put his arm around her, pulled her close. "It's over," he said quietly. "Patience, it's over." "I didn't think," her voice broke. "I didn't think anyone would ever." "I know, but it's done now. We're safe." Nora was watching Ezra with those knowing eyes. "Are you okay?" "No." He sat down heavily in a chair. "I killed a man tonight. That's never okay." "He deserved it." "Maybe, but that doesn't make it easier." He looked at his hands. "I've killed before, in the war, but this was for us." "Yes." She moved to him, knelt down, took his bloodied hands in her small ones. "My mama killed a man once, before Whitmore. A man who tried to hurt me when I was 6. Ezra looked at her. "She never talked about it," Nora continued. "Never told anyone. But I saw her after. Saw how she couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. How she'd stare at her hands like she didn't recognize them. What happened? Eventually she forgave herself. Said some things are worth the weight they put on your soul. Said protecting your children is one of them." Ezra's vision blurred. "Smart woman, your mama." "She was." Nora squeezed his hands. "And you know what she would have said about you." "What?" "She would have said you're the kind of man she prayed would find us. The kind who'd kill a monster to save children he didn't even know." Nora's voice wavered. "She would have said we were lucky. And she would have been right." Ezra couldn't speak, couldn't find words for the emotion swelling in his chest. So he did what he could. He pulled her into his arms and held her tight, this fierce little girl who'd kept 9 children alive through hell and come out the other side still fighting. His daughter. Maybe not by blood, but by choice. By something stronger than blood. "Thank you," he whispered, "for trusting me. Thank you for being worth trusting." The riders arrived mid-morning, 13 more children in tow. They came in slowly, cautiously, like wild animals approaching a water source they weren't sure was safe. Their eyes darted everywhere, to the house, to the yard, to Ezra standing on the porch. And then they saw the other children. "Nora!" A girl of about 8 broke from the group, running full speed across the yard. Nora caught her, wrapped her arms around her, held her tight. "Susie! Oh God, Susie, you made it! You came back. You said you'd send help and you did. You actually did." One by one, the reunions happened. Children finding friends, finding family, finding proof that the nightmare was really over. Ezra watched it all from the porch, Eli standing beside him. 23, the boy said quietly. "We started with 23 at the farm. Now we've got all of us. That's a lot of mouths to feed. You having second thoughts?" Ezra looked at the chaos in his yard. 23 children ranging from toddlers to teenagers, some crying, some laughing, some just standing in shocked silence. 23 lives depending on him. "No," he said. "No second thoughts. Just trying to figure out how many bedrooms I need to build." Eli almost smiled. "You're serious. You're really going to keep all of us?" "Where else would you go?" "I don't know." orphanages, work farms, back to wherever they bought us from in the first place. No. Ezra's voice was firm. None of that. You're home now. All of you. This is your home. But why? The question burst out of Eli like something he'd been holding back for too long. Why do you care? Why does any of this matter to you? Ezra looked at the boy, saw the desperate need behind the question, the need to understand why someone, anyone, would choose them. Because 3 years ago I lost everything, he said quietly. My wife, my daughter, my reason for living. And I spent every day since then wishing I was dead. Eli's expression shifted. Then I found you, all of you, broken and scared and fighting like hell to survive. And something inside me woke up. Ezra put a hand on the boy's shoulder. You saved me, Eli. You and Nora and all the others. You gave me a reason to keep breathing. We didn't do anything. You existed. You needed help. You let me be the person I was supposed to be. Ezra's voice cracked. That's everything. That's more than you'll ever know. Eli stared at him for a long moment. Then something in his face crumpled. I don't know how to be a kid, he whispered. I've been fighting for so long, taking care of the others, watching for danger. I don't know how to just... Then we'll learn together, all of us, one day at a time. What if I can't? Then we'll figure something else out. But you're not alone anymore, son. None of you are. Eli's eyes filled with tears. He blinked them back hard the way he'd learned to, but they came anyway. And for the first time since Ezra had met him, the boy didn't try to hide them. Okay, he whispered. Okay, I'll try. That's all any of us can do. The day passed in a blur of activity, feeding 23 hungry children, finding places for them to sleep, tending to injuries both visible and invisible. Marshal Whitfield stayed through the afternoon taking statements documenting evidence building the case that would destroy what remained of Whitmore's operation. His nephew's testimony will be crucial, Whitfield said quietly to Ezra as the sun began to set. Jacob's willing to name names, buyers, sellers, officials who looked the other way. This goes deeper than one man and one farm. How deep? Deep enough to shake the territory, maybe the whole region. Whitfield shook his head. Children being sold like cattle, judges being bribed, a whole system designed to profit from the most vulnerable. Will anything change? Something already has. Whitfield nodded toward the yard where 23 children were beginning to play. Actually play for the first time in months or years. You saved them, Mr. Callahan. You and my deputy and that young man who turned on his own family. That matters. It's not enough. No, but it's a start. That night, Ezra stood on the porch and watched the stars appear one by one. 23 children slept inside his house, some in beds, some on floors, some curled together in corners like puppies in a pile. His family. The word didn't feel strange anymore. It felt right. Nora appeared beside him, silent as always. You should sleep, he said. Can't. Too much thinking. About what? About tomorrow, and the day after, and all the days after that. She leaned against the porch railing. Is this real? Is this actually happening? It's real. Sometimes I think I'm going to wake up and be back at the farm, back in chains, back in the dark. You're not going back. Ever. I promise. She was quiet for a moment. My mama made me a promise once. Said she'd always protect me. Said no one would ever hurt me while she was alive. She kept that promise. I know, she died keeping it. Nora's voice wavered. And now you're making the same promise. And I want to believe you. I want to so bad. But what if I die too? She nodded, unable to speak. Ezra knelt down, brought himself to her level. I can't promise I'll live forever. Nobody can promise that. But I can promise you this: every day I'm alive, I'll fight for you. For all of you, with everything I have. And if you die, then you'll keep fighting. Because that's who you are, Nora. A fighter. A survivor. A leader. He touched her cheek. And you'll have 22 brothers and sisters fighting beside you. You'll never be alone again. She looked at him for a long moment. Then she wrapped her arms around his neck and held on tight. I love you, she whispered. I know I shouldn't say that. I know you're not really my papa, but I love you anyway. Ezra's heart broke and healed in the same moment. I love you too, sweetheart. All of you. More than I ever thought I could love anything again. They stayed like that as the stars wheeled overhead. A man who'd lost everything and a child who'd never had anything finding family in the most unlikely of places. Tomorrow would bring challenges, legal battles, building projects, learning how to be a family of 24. But tonight, there was just this. Love. Found in the wreckage. Hope. Rising from the ashes. Home. Finally, mercifully, impossibly home. The weeks after the rescue passed like water finding its way downhill. Slow at first, then faster, then settling into something that felt almost like normal. Ezra filed the custody papers on a Tuesday morning, standing in the territorial office with his hat in his hands and his heart somewhere near his boots. The clerk, a gray-haired woman with spectacles perched on her nose, looked at the forms and then looked at him. 23 children, Mr. Callahan, all at once. Yes, ma'am. That's quite an undertaking for a man on his own. I ain't on my own. Got more help than I deserve. She studied him for a long moment. Then she smiled. Those are lucky children. I can tell just by looking at you. I'm the lucky one, ma'am. They saved my life as much as I saved theirs. The papers went through without a hitch. Marshal Whitfield had made sure of that, pulling every string he had to smooth the process. By the end of the month, it was official. 23 children, one father, one family. The words still felt strange on Ezra's tongue, like a language he'd forgotten how to speak. But every day it got a little easier. Nora was the first to call him Papa. It happened on a Thursday evening, unremarkable in every way. She was helping him with dinner, standing on a stool to reach the stove, when she turned and said, Papa, can you hand me the salt? Then she froze. Her face went red. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. I know you're not really... Nora. Ezra set down the pot he was holding. I am if you want me to be. But your real children, they're gone, and nothing's going to bring them back. No. He crouched down to her level. Nothing will. But that doesn't mean I can't love again. Doesn't mean my heart is closed forever. So it's okay if I call you Papa. It's more than okay. His voice caught. It's everything. She threw her arms around his neck. Ezra held her while dinner burned on the stove, and neither of them cared. Eli took longer. The boy had been hurt too deeply, trusted too little to let down his guard easily. He called Ezra Sir for weeks after the rescue, maintaining that formal distance, like armor against a world that had never given him reason to hope. Ezra didn't push, just kept showing up, teaching Eli about the ranch, about horses, about all the things a father teaches a son, waiting for the walls to come down on their own time. It happened in the barn late one night when Ezra found Eli crying in the hayloft. Silent tears streaming down his face, his whole body shaking with the effort of keeping quiet. Hey. Ezra climbed up, settled beside him. What's wrong? Nothing. I'm fine. You don't look fine. I said I'm fine. Ezra waited, didn't speak. Just sat there in the darkness, letting the silence stretch until Eli couldn't hold it anymore. I had a dream. The boy's voice was barely a whisper. About my mama, the one who sold me. What kind of dream? She was reaching for me, crying, saying she was sorry, saying she didn't have a choice. Eli's voice cracked. And I wanted to forgive her. I wanted to so bad. But I couldn't. I just kept running away. Ezra let out a slow breath. That's a hard dream. I'm a bad person for not forgiving her, for being angry. No, son, you're not. Ezra put a hand on Eli's shoulder, felt him flinch, felt him almost pull away, then felt him lean in, just a little. What your mama did wasn't your fault. It was her choice, her failure, not yours. But she's my mama. I'm supposed to love her. You can love someone and still be angry at what they did. Those things can both be true. Eli sat with that for a while. Did you love your family before they died? More than anything in the world. What were they like? Ezra hadn't talked about Martha and Lily in years, hadn't let himself. But something about Eli's quiet earnestness made the words come easier. My wife Martha, she was the strongest person I ever knew. Not strong like lifting heavy things, though she could do that too. Strong like standing up for what was right even when it cost her. He smiled at the memory. She had a laugh that could fill a room, made you want to be funnier just to hear it. And your daughter. Lily was 3 when she died. Sweetest child you ever saw. Used to follow me around the ranch like a little shadow. She'd sing to the chickens. Told me it made them lay more eggs. Did it? You know what I think maybe it did? Eli almost smiled. Nora looks like her. Lily, I noticed. Is that why you helped us because of how she looks? It's why I stopped, but it's not why I stayed. Ezra picked up a piece of straw, turned it over in his fingers. I stayed because what was happening to you kids was wrong. Because somebody had to stand up. Because I spent 3 years feeling dead inside, and when I heard you all in that church, something woke up. What? Hope, I guess. Or maybe just purpose. Eli was quiet for a long time. Then he stood up, brushed off his pants, and held out his hand. Thank you, Pa, for everything. Pa. Ezra shook his hand man to man. You're welcome, son. Patience was the one who surprised him most. The girl who'd barely spoken since the rescue, who'd been saved by Eli when Burke came for her, who flinched at loud noises and slept with a knife under her pillow. She started leaving things for Ezra, drawings mostly, pictures of the ranch, the horses, the mountains, and always in every picture, a tall figure surrounded by smaller ones. Their family. One morning, Ezra found a picture on his pillow. It showed him sitting by the fire with all 23 children around him. At the bottom, in careful wobbly letters, were the words, My Papa. He kept that picture in his pocket for the rest of his life. Gus recovered slowly. The fever that had nearly killed him left scars on his lungs. The doctor came out once a month to check on him, always leaving with the same prognosis. The boy will never be strong, but he'll live. That was enough. Gus took to ranch life like he'd been born to it. He couldn't do the heavy work, but he had a gift with the animals. The horses calmed under his touch. The chickens followed him around like he was their king. I want to be a veterinarian, Gus announced one day at breakfast. When I grow up, I want to help animals the way Dr. Henderson helps people. That's a fine goal, Ezra said. Going to take a lot of studying. I don't mind studying. Nora's been teaching me to read. I'm getting pretty good. Is that so? Show him, Eli urged. Gus grabbed a book from the shelf, one of Martha's old novels, and started reading aloud. His voice was halting at first, uncertain, but he pushed through word by word, sentence by sentence. A boy who'd been told he was only good for farm labor reading literature. Ezra had to look away so the children wouldn't see him cry. Goldie remained Goldie, sunshine despite everything. The child who sang to chickens and believed in angels and refused to let the darkness of her past dim the brightness of her soul. She called Ezra Daddy from the start, as if it had never occurred to her to call him anything else. Daddy, look at this flower. Daddy, can I have another biscuit? Daddy, will you tell me a story before bed? Every time the word hit him like a gift he didn't deserve. Every time he said yes. But it was Goldie who asked the hardest question one night when Ezra was tucking her in. "Daddy, is Mama watching us from heaven?" Ezra's heart clenched. "Which Mama, sweetheart?" "Both of them. My real Mama and your real wife. Are they friends now, up there?" He thought about Martha, about Goldie's mother who died in a workhouse, about all the pain and love and loss that had brought them to this moment. "I think they are," he said finally. "I think they're looking down at us right now, real proud of how we've put ourselves back together." Goldie smiled. "I like that. I'm going to dream about them tonight." "You do that, sweetheart. You dream about all the people who love you. That's a lot of people now." "Yes, it is." Sparrow was the one who broke him. The smallest girl. The one who hadn't spoken a word since her Cheyenne mother died. Who followed Nora everywhere, clutching her ragged blanket, watching the world with enormous dark eyes that seemed to hold too much knowledge for someone so small. Ezra didn't push her, didn't demand words, just made sure she always had food in her belly and a safe place to sleep and someone to hold her when the nightmares came. And then one morning, Sparrow spoke. They were sitting on the porch, watching the sunrise. Sparrow was in Ezra's lap, wrapped in that blanket, when she suddenly looked up. "Papa." Ezra's heart stopped. "What did you say?" Sparrow's small hand touched his face. "Papa?" "Yes, little one. I'm your papa. Mama's gone." "I know, sweetheart. I'm so sorry. But you're here." "I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere." Sparrow considered this for a long moment. Then she nodded once, like she'd decided something important, and snuggled closer. She still didn't talk much after that, but she talked, and every word was a victory. The trial came in the fall. Marshal Whitfield had built an airtight case against what remained of Whitmore's operation. Jacob's testimony was devastating. Names, dates, prices, officials who'd looked the other way while children were sold like cattle. But it was the children's testimony that changed everything. One by one, they stood before the territorial court and told their stories. Nora, her voice steady, despite the tears streaming down her face, describing her mother's murder. Eli, his jaw set like stone, admitting he'd killed a man to protect patients. Gus barely strong enough to stand detailing the conditions in the fields. And when it was over, when the judge had heard everything, he didn't just convict the defendants. He called for a territorial investigation into child labor practices across the region. "What happened to these children?" The judge said, his voice shaking with barely contained rage, "is an abomination, a stain on everything this territory claims to stand for. And I will not rest until every operation like Whitmore's is destroyed." The papers called it the Callahan case. The papers called Ezra a hero. He didn't feel like a hero. He felt like a man who'd done what needed doing and somehow survived. But the children, his children, they looked at him differently after that. Like he'd proved something they'd been afraid to believe. That good men existed. That justice was possible. That someone would fight for them. That they mattered. Winter came hard that year, but the ranch was ready. 23 children meant 23 appetites. 23 sets of clothes to mend 23 bedtime stories, and scraped knees, and questions about everything under the sun. It should have been overwhelming. Some days it was. But every morning, Ezra woke to the sound of children laughing, fighting, learning, growing, and every night he went to bed knowing they were safe. That was worth everything. On Christmas Eve, they gathered around the fire, all 24 of them pressed into a space built for 4. Ezra looked around at the faces illuminated by firelight. Nora, fierce and strong, reading a story to the younger ones. Eli, his arm around Patience, actually smiling. Gus, wrapped in blankets, his breathing easier than it had been in months. Goldie teaching the twins a song she'd made up. Sparrow and Fern inseparable, now watching everything with those ancient eyes. And all the others. The 13 from Whitmore's barn. The children who'd come to him broken and were slowly, painfully, miraculously healing. His family. Pa! Eli's voice broke through his thoughts. You okay? Yeah, son, just thinking. About what? Ezra smiled. About how lucky I am. Lucky? Nora looked up from her book. You've got 23 kids who eat everything in sight, make noise at all hours, and can't agree on anything. I know. That doesn't sound lucky. That sounds like chaos. It is chaos. Ezra's voice softened. It's the best kind of chaos there is. Silence. Then Goldie launched herself at him, wrapping her arms around his neck. I love you, Daddy. I love you too, Sunshine. Me too. One of the twins chimed in. Me too, echoed his brother. Me too, said Patience, quiet but certain. Me too, said Gus. And then they were all saying it all. 23 voices joining in a chorus that filled the house and spilled out into the cold night air. I love you, I love you, I love you. Ezra held them as best he could, this tangle of arms and legs and beating hearts that had somehow become his reason for living. I love you all, he said, more than you'll ever know. Later, when the children had finally fallen asleep in heaps around the fire, Ezra slipped outside. The night was cold and clear stars scattered across the sky like diamonds on black velvet. He walked up the hill behind the house to the 2 graves he'd dug 3 years ago. Martha, Lily. He stood there for a long time, looking at the wooden crosses, the stones he'd carved by hand. I brought some folks home, he finally said. 23 of them, kids who needed someone to fight for them. The wind stirred cold but gentle. I hope you don't mind. I hope you understand that loving them doesn't mean I love you any less. It just means my heart got bigger. Had to hold all of this. He touched Martha's stone. You'd like them, Nora especially. She's fierce like you. Doesn't take any nonsense. And Lily, his voice cracked. There's a little one named Sparrow. She didn't talk for months after we found her. Reminded me so much of our girl. That same sweetness. That same quiet strength. He wiped his eyes. I'm not drowning anymore. I'm swimming. And I think that's what you'd want for me. A branch cracked behind him. Ezra turned to find Nora standing there wrapped in a blanket. The others were worried. You were gone a long time. Just talking to my girls. Nora came to stand beside him, looked at the graves. Your first family. Yes? Do you miss them? Every day, every single day. Ezra put an arm around her shoulders. But missing them doesn't mean I can't be happy. Doesn't mean I can't love you and all the others. Is that what your wife would want? It's exactly what she would want. Martha never could stand waste, especially wasted love. Nora leaned against him. I think I would have liked her. She would have loved you. All of you. They stood in silence for a while, watching the stars. Then Nora asked, What happens now? What do you mean? This, us, the family. What happens next? Ezra thought about all the challenges ahead. The legal battles still pending. The buildings that needed to be built to house 23 growing children. The education they needed. The healing they still had to do. The 1,000 ways the world would try to tell them they weren't worthy of love. Now we keep living, he said. One day at a time. We make mistakes. We learn from them. We get hurt and we heal. We grow. That's it. That's everything. He looked down at her. That's what families do, Nora. They show up for each other. Day after day after day. Through the good times and the bad times, and all the ordinary moments in between. That sounds hard. It is. But it's also the best thing there is. She was quiet for a long moment. Papa. Yeah. Thank you. For finding us. For keeping us. For becoming our father when you didn't have to. Ezra knelt down, cupped her face in his hands. I didn't become your father, sweetheart. I was always supposed to be. I just didn't know it until you screamed in that church and woke me up." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "I love you, Papa." "I love you too, Nora. More than words can say." He hugged her tight, this fierce little girl, who'd kept 9 children alive through hell and led him back to life in the process. Then they walked down the hill together toward the house full of sleeping children. Their family. The first anniversary of finding the children came on a hot summer day. Ezra didn't make a big deal of it, didn't want to dredge up the trauma, but the children remembered anyway. "1 year," Nora said at breakfast. "1 year since you found us." "Best day of my life," Ezra said, even if I didn't know it at the time. "Mine too." She reached over and took his hand. "Thank you for stopping, for not just riding past." "I couldn't have ridden past if I'd wanted to. Something in your scream just grabbed hold of me, wouldn't let go." "Mama used to say God works in mysterious ways." "Your mama was a wise woman." "She was." Nora's smile was sad but peaceful. "I miss her every day, but I think she'd be happy knowing we found you, knowing we're safe." "I hope so. I know so." That night the whole family gathered in the yard for a celebration. 24 people laughing and eating and being together. Ezra looked around at the faces he'd come to love more than he'd ever thought possible. At the children who'd found him broken and helped him heal. At the family that had grown from tragedy and somehow become something beautiful. He thought about all the other children still out there. The ones in workhouses and factories and farms like Whitmore's. The ones nobody was looking for. Nobody was fighting for. And he made a quiet promise to himself. This wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. "Pa," Eli appeared at his side. "You've got that look again." "What look?" "The one that means you're planning something." Ezra smiled. "Maybe I am." "Care to share?" "Not yet, but when the time's right, I'll tell you." Eli nodded. He'd learned to trust Ezra's timing. "Whatever it is, I'm in. I know you are, son. That's why I know we can do it." The sun set. The stars came out. 23 children laughed and played and grew and healed. And Ezra Callahan, the man who'd wanted to die, sat surrounded by the family he never expected to find, and made plans for a future he finally believed in. Some stories end with tragedy. Some end with triumph. This one ended with something better, something truer, something that lasted beyond the final page. It ended with a man who found his reason to live in a burned-out church. It ended with children who learned that love was real and worth fighting for. It ended with a family built not from blood, but from choice, from the decision to stand together, even when it was hard, especially when it was hard. It ended with 24 hearts beating as one. And that, in the end, was everything. That was home.